And I am back. Sorry about that. I don't know if I'm live. I had a big major connection outage. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, sorry about that. I lost the end of the conversation with Alban, but we're going to switch with Denis, who was working for an institute called INR, Institut du Numérique Responsable. Had the pleasure to collaborate with Denis a few months ago.
Yes.
Hello, Denis. And
Yeah.
in his talk, he will introduce the reference guide that we worked on, and Denis is the stage.
Yes. Thank you, Sebastian. I'm very pleased to be here today, and we'll talk about the handbook. This is called the HB 491, and we'll dive into what's in. The first thing, INR, or Institute for Sustainable IT, is already established in France, in Belgium, in Switzerland, and we gather more than 100 members in these three countries, from large company to small business or non-profit. So it's very diverse in the activities, and it's very open. So when we talk about sustainable IT, we need to cover the three dimensions. The first dimension is the environment. The second is people, how to break the gaps between people and IT. And the third one is prosperity. It's more about economic, how to be sure what we're producing is fair for everybody. The story of this handbook started almost 2 years ago in 2020, when we used the collaboration of more than 100 contributors who works in the working group, and we released the first version for internal purpose in earlier this year, and we use some members of Institute of Sustainable IT in order to check how we can go live with this handbook. Is it really efficient for organization? So we use some beta test companies in order to improve and make sure it's rock solid. And finally, we go live in October this year, and for sure it's not the end of the story. We should go further and add some trainings, keep updating the material, and then go further with some standards or labels in order to be more efficient. The global scope of the handbook is not only for web service. We aim to cover every kind of IT systems, from framework, API, business needs, infrastructure, data, and so on. But there's some small coverage, and we have to refine, is about IoT, about big data, about artificial intelligence, and we have a working group actually in the INR in order to go deeper in this way, and maybe the DevOps part should be also completed with more advanced features. The goal is to provide some good practices to be deployed in every kind of organization, and to match and cover the three dimension of sustainable IT, and make sure it can adapt to any kind of organization or any kind of structure. And for sure, the technologies are evolving very quickly, and we can't get stuck on some technology. So we take the challenge to be rather agnostic from the technology in order to ensure it will be okay in the future. And it covers also some external regulations such as accessibility, WCAG for international reference, or RGAA for French part, which is the French regulation for accessibility. The structure of this handbook is organized in three in different parts. The first abstract of this is about families. One family, in fact, is a step in the progress of project, and we define 8 families. These families are associated with some recommendation. We'll go a little deeper in recommendation. A recommendation is a global objective in order to match and comply with sustainable IT. These recommendations are linked with the sustainable development goals stated by United Nations, and we cover 11 of these goals out of the 17 defined. These recommendations are to be used with some specific question. These questions are called criteria in the handbook, and we have 491 criteria. This is where the name handbook for 91 came from, and some of these criteria are very important, and we identify 41 criteria which are mandatory in order to comply with sustainable IT. Let's go deeper in the handbook. The handbook is public, and there's a website which is available in French and English. But just to be clear, it's an English translation. It's not localization. This means that some words are translated from French to English, but we do not adapt, for instance, the laws and regulation for other countries. So when we talk about regulation, it's in the point of view of French regulation, even if it's written in English. So the first part of this is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we already talk about this. So you can select, if your company subscribe to some of these goals, you're able to select which kind of recommendation are covered by this goal. So the link between recommendation and SDG is obvious here. The 8 project steps, and we call it families, go from the strategy. How can we define the context of a project? What are the values we want to share? How can we get organized to run the project? This is the strategy and the very early part of a project. Then we go deeper in specification, writing user stories, and translate business needs into technical stuff. This is this is covered in specification. Then we have to implement all this. The first thing is about UX UI. How can we define some interface and user journey in order to make it efficient for our user. The next part is about content. What are we delivering to our user? What's in, and how can we be sure every content is relevant for the user? The next operation are about development and coding and more technical. This is about the front-end development, the related backend with the data we have to manage and deal with, and the architecture in order to deploy something very efficient from a technical point of view. And finally, when all this is done, we need to host the service, and the last part of the handbook is about hosting. So here is a sample view of recommendation. We already have the family here. The family is a strategy. We have the SDG related and the definition of the recommendation. This is the main objective, and we should go in this way in order to be more efficient in sustainable IT. This is the direction, let's say, the bearing. And in order to go deeper in this recommendation, we have some items, some criteria. There's some criteria which are very formal, and we define these very precisely, and some of the criteria are more difficult to rate and to get some specific metrics. We call them advices. So, and among this all these criteria, we have some tips which are essential, and we need to cover this in order to be sure we are on the right track for sustainable IT. Here is the view of a detail of one criteria. We have the question. Here the question is a visual soberness implemented in order to reduce the energy. We have a test. How can we check all this? The definition, why this is exposed in the handbook, and finally we can have more details about how is it difficult to implement, what is the priority of this criteria, when do we need to update and check this criteria. It could be once in the project or at any update, and so on. And in order to make it more efficient, we also have some feature in order to get some metrics and some rules in order to get the compliance. For instance, here, how many features do we have and how many features are validated? So we can have a ratio for this and get a metric for compliance on this. But let's just go in a project cycle. We go from the very early stage. Something is in people's mind, and we dive in this and go to the hosting and the production deployment. The first part is the design. and you can see the families that are related or for this stage. We can go in the development and integration. The families we already talked about are very technical, front, back, and architecture. And finally, we have to deploy all this in production, and here we can get some information on architecture and hosting. The handbook is very very huge with 491 reference in it. How can we deploy this in your organization? The first step is just start with a handbook as a whole. Select what could be important for you. Did you subscribe to some SDG? Then you can select some criteria, and maybe your activity is different from over organization. So just select the recommendation that makes sense for you, and in this way you will customize the handbook for your company, for your organization. Then when you have your own handbook, then for each project you can select the criteria that are relevant for the project. Every project are very similar in our organization, but sometimes it's just improvement, or sometimes it's a brand new project. So the criteria may differ from the kind of project we are dealing with. So we can extract from my handbook the checklist for my project, and then in the project management, the product owner, it's maybe the right person for this, will use this checklist and give the checklist to every members of a staff in order to ensure we are compliant with the best practices. And finally, when the service is released, we can have a global compliance with a handbook. And that's it from me. So if you have some questions, I will be pleased to answer.
Thank you, Denis. We do have one question. Is you were talking about, we've been talking about developers, we've been talking about hosting providers, how they can help. You mentioned in your families, and I've worked in one of the families, I collaborated in one of the families. We're talking about strategy, and could you tell us a little bit more about what is expected in the strategy stage?
Okay, and we are used to say accessibility or sustainable IT is something for techies, and if we are not developers, we do not have to take care of this. This is totally wrong. And if we take the sustainable IT very early in the project, it's more efficient. For instance, when we are checking the capability of the company to deploy and develop the service, is the service good for the company? Is the service good for our sustainable IT goals? Does the service comply to some SDG, or is it something totally weird? And we have to ensure everything is on the right track just before going into a development. And if we have some very clear business need explained and expressed and validated. We will not do something that will be trashed a few months after. So it's very important to take it very early.
Sounds good. We saw earlier with Litic, it started as almost as a KPI at the company level. So it's a real strategy by the whole company. Very interesting. I mean, as you mentioned, this work is done in French and translated in English. Do you have any idea of what the other countries are doing? Is France the only one moving in that stage, or are there only other things moving in the sustainability?
It's rather surprising, but let's say France is one of the best in class in this part, and we are very advanced in this area and sustainable IT. And let's go back a decade ago, and it was in 2010. It was the first time we heard about sustainable IT, and everybody says, "Oh, it's good. Let's dive in." But the wave goes down, and everybody forget about this. And now we are on a second ramp up. And what is different in France is that there's some new laws and regulation, and there's some enforcement to be defined in order to improve sustainable IT. And we already have some laws in order to develop cycle economy and refine the sustainable IT in every project at the government level, for instance. And it's very we are very proud to be part of this in France, and many countries are looking at what we are doing here. It's good. Yeah.
That sounds really good. Thank you so much, Denis. Indeed, we do understand that the public, the public system can lead the way, and I think, we know that it's doing a lot in France, and we're hoping that it's going to start moving more and more, and we're going to have more of the private sector also investing, as we saw with Mythic, for example. Thank you again, Denis.